Um, Hi, Buff friends. I'm head programmer Kai Perrignon here. It is Wednesday, March 18th, and I'm talking to Roundup writer-director Rima Tamou and producer Pauline Clague. Thanks so much for screening the film with us and sitting down to chat with me.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having us. It's a bit of an honor.
Just want to start off by acknowledging country and just saying Ginigay, Ajawaja Nam, Wajing Niga Arundri, uh, Naya Pauline, and Naya Rima.
Awesome. Yeah. As is tradition, I should just, we should say where we come from. My name's obviously Rima Tamou. I'm Bulgamora, which is my mother's side, up here in Far North Queensland, where I am currently, up near the Hopevale community. And on my dad's side, I'm Māori, and that's Ngāruahine, which is uh, in the North Island, Taranaki area of New Zealand, but born and bred in Far North Queensland. Yeah, PJ.
And Naya Pauline Clague, and I'm a Jaeger woman from the north coast of New South Wales. The mighty Clarence River, the mouth of it, is our area. And the two of us met each other, gosh, over 30 years ago. I think I picked Rimmer up at the airport.
That's right, you did.
We were both doing our afters course,
Yeah.
Lister Bostock course. So, and then
It, it was a cold
started
Sydney
many.
winter. It was a cold Sydney winter. I remember it well. Going down to do a course, which was, I guess, the start of our filmmaking journey and our passion for sharing stories coming from a similar background. Our country is river country and it has sugar cane, both, regional, country people. Pauline growing close up with their culture. I say my culture is more a bit of a towny culture. But we gelled. I think we had complementary visions about where we wanted to go. We both wanted to tell stories. Pauline's history in politics and with her prominent family in politics and culture, and I think you were at uni doing law, a part law degree. Mine was I don't know. I think mine was one of just wanting to explore this thing called filmmaking and where we come from. You either become a tradie at best, which is nothing wrong with that, and I did do that. But to get into film and TV like we have been has been such a huge diversion from the normal trek. And I think it was, as I look back at our last 30 years or more, you know, it's always a pleasure. And I was saying to this to Kai before we came on about looking back and reflecting on your journey. And I think too, for me, it's like encouraging other filmmakers who TV or film is a bit foreign to them, but they have an interest. And I think storytelling, regardless of the genre, is what this is about. Storytelling and particularly camaraderie and working with people, which Pauline and I have done through for so many years now. And I think you build a trust with someone. There's going to be a show and tell involvement in there. So everyone's going to see what you've been getting up to. And you've got to be honest with yourself about what story you're doing and how you're approaching it. And I think working with Pauline, she's been very, a great support to my journey. And I certainly wouldn't be sitting here today without my producer and close friend.
I think it's also that thing of we happen to be at the right place at the right time. 30 odd years ago when we did the afters course, I think, we all went in as directors. I was the bossy one and so became the producer on the film. Just around the same time they were talking about creating the Indigenous unit at Screen Australia, and the initiative from Sanders Celluloid by Wal Saunders, the late great Wal Saunders, was created. And while we were at film school, there were 7 of us from all around Australia living in a house together, all Indigenous, sort of going to school and sort of kind of learning off each other. And I think there were three of us that sort of kind of stayed in contact, but me and Rim sort of like went, we should apply for the initiative. And we didn't realize at the time that it was only supposed to be for the first time director, that it wasn't for the producer as well. And so we were the only ones that had both of us learning on the job in a way. And we had great advocates in the Indigenous, it was the Australian Film Commission back then, now Screen Australia. Uncle Bob Mazza, who's a legendary actor, was a board member and batted for us. And then we also had our great mentor, Uncle Lester, who sort of kind of like went, you got to just go for it, and we did. And Rima, I suppose in a way, Roundup was just, Rima always was a fish out of water, way more country than I was. And so
still am, maybe.
The film sort of relates to silly things that he was doing in spaces of Sydney, just sort of kind of going from a country town into a city. We didn't realize that it would have the effect that it did have, when it started getting noticed. And I think all of us had that thing, and it was such a great camaraderie between the 6 filmmakers, directors that were in the teams doing the workshops down in the original first workshop was in Melbourne and then later in Sydney before. And, we'd worked on TV sets, I suppose, Rim?
Yeah.
And a couple of community stuff, but we hadn't really done a film. So it was a huge learning curve. And we had Graham Isaac, who was our sort of series producer, who sort of gave us a bit of support to, see it through in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And in case no one knows yet, Roundup, they're meant to be 10-minute films. Ours ended up being 17 minutes. We had a lot of support. I think there was the boys who were organized everything in terms of Wal Saunders, saw the humor and the camaraderie between a black and a white. Who the story was about is essentially about 2 Stockman young guys who were very competitive out in the bush, and in one of their competitive they start out with a bit of a fight and they end up in a hospital in the city, and it's about them to essentially and their journey home and how they put aside their differences in a way. And I think it's a reflection of our journey walking together, and that is about there's always the genres always has to be some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. We never gravitated to the darker films, which is nothing other than people's choices, but ours was all about hope through struggle and positivity at the end of it. I think that's an ongoing theme through several films that we did after that, and we've worked on feature documentaries, and currently we've worked in television mostly. Pauline is multi-skilled. I'm not as multi-skilled. I'm still mostly a writer, director, and TV producer, and Pauline does, well, if you see any credits, she does everything else. So I think as we look back at this film, and I think people take away from this, the essence, if you take away from this, is something warm and positive. If you look at any of the films moving forward, they have that same tone. They have that same sort of flavor, because I think it's at heart where we come from. It's always about we may have struggles in our lives individually, whether that's in a story on a screen or in your own personal life, but we try to impart the message that there's positivity there. There's people who can help you, and that's been something that's enriching for us. Yeah.
And I think also that thing of like, we really wanted to show contemporary stories of identity, and that there's not one way to skin the cat in who owns that story, whether it's black or white. We all have identity issues, and that universal theme of how do we get along and what do we see, and, not reading or judging a book by its cover. I think one of the things that we didn't, it was back when you didn't have to tick the boxes around, is it diverse? Is it whatever? We made it diverse because that's what both of us had grew up around. So when May was cast as the Asian woman in the hospital, everyone went, oh, it's really interesting that you chose an Asian woman. It's like, just, we know old Asian, they were just people that we're used to being surrounded by the multiculturalism in our country towns that we come from, that I think it just seemed obvious for us. People look at the film now and they go, oh, that's ahead of its time. I think the other thing is that Rimmer loves, I call them testosterone films. He will bring out a gun or horses or something action-wise, which is also something that attracts both of us to the film, is that being on country and, being able to do a roundup in some shape or form on screen on a short, heard of
Crazy.
back
Yeah.
in the day. And also just, Rimmer would dream stuff up and he'd go, let's shoot in central, we have to do it at Central Station in Sydney. And, not knowing how big that meant
Yeah.
to sort of try and shut down the bus stop in the middle of the night to do that shot. But I think that stuff was really important for us, was showing our mob in that setting, in very metropolitan landscape as well as a very country landscape, because that's who both of us were.
Very true. Yeah. Yeah. Just trying to give people an insight into that journey. I mean,
can I tell you do you know what the funniest thing, Kai, was? And
yeah.
So Ben Oxenbould, who plays Desi,
Yeah.
hadn't been on a film for a very long time. He'd been a child actor in Hey Dad and a few other things, and hadn't been in a film for a while. So when Rimmer chose him, he just said, yeah, I can ride a horse. And we presume, because we couldn't tell that the actor was lying, And then he sort of kind of said to me, oh, for insurance purposes, I probably should tell you I can't ride a horse. So this is 2 days out from shoot that he finally told us that he couldn't ride a horse. So we had to take him up and get him up there quicker to do a day of work with the horse wrangler that was on set. And the first shot, I mean, we had people that did the stunts of them riding down the hills and stuff like that. But there's one bit where he had to jump over the log because it needed his face in it. And he fell off the horse, broke his ribs. And then the next day was the fight scene. And so when you hear the sounds of the fight, which is the opening sequence, they actually really were him grunting because he had broken ribs at that point. So even a fake sort of hit to him was letting him at all times. So for us, I think it was that thing of
great acting,
learning very quickly on the job that something could go wrong. And the horse on the first shot went straight.
The very first shot, the horse hit the camera.
The camera assistant got hit by the horse because she protected the camera.
Yeah.
We had an actor that was injured, and our focus was injured as well for the 10 days of the shoot. So I wouldn't suggest probably pulling up the actors quicker to sort of kind of go, can you really ride a horse? But that was an amazing experience, I think, in so many ways. Hey, Rim, we learned
it was
so much about it. We had and this is one thing to say, we didn't know any better. We, back in the day, before the internet, we used to get a production book, like it was called the Encore, and you would what we did when we started working was we just went, whose films or what films do we like? And then started looking for the credits of those films for Australian film. So we didn't know that you shouldn't ask these big players. You know, we had Kim Batterham shooting our film. You know, we were totally unknowns. John Scott had moved from I can't remember which, it was one of the really big films that
Jane Campion. It was just come off a 60 something. There was 60 Minutes. He was going into a Jane Campion a
yeah.
film, and yeah, so we were fortunate
So
to
he
get
was,
him.
you know, he had just come off an Oscar-winning bloody
Yeah.
film, and we just asked him. Like we saw credits of people, we saw all the credits and went, oh, that's someone that I really like their work with. And we had this thing, hey Rim, where we would say, if we go and have a cup of coffee with them and we like how they talk to us, and
That's right.
you know, and
That was the basis for it all.
that was the basis for why we were choosing crew, because we also wanted to make sure that in every department we had an Indigenous person hired in that team. And so each department had a friend of ours that had been through the film school or was a part of the collective that wanted to get into film that was in each of our departments. And it allowed us to sort of kind of not just talk about and because we were the first to go in Sandor Celluloid, we were the first film to go into production. It meant that often some of those big names, because then everyone was like, how the hell are you getting all these big names on your short film production? And so they would go, oh, can you come on ours? And the Indigenous person that was the clapper loader or the art assistant, you know, ended up working across quite a few of the Sandor Celluloid projects because of that. And really proud that we sort of kind of pushed that sort of kind of thing about saying we want it to be a family, you know, filmmaking is a community, and you know, you're going to be around these people for a period of time. We knew it was only for 10 days, but we knew that this film possibly could have a longevity to it. We just didn't realize how big an impact. I think, you know, when you look at No Way to Forget, you know, Roundup, you know,
Payback,
you know, Payback, you know, they all had, we all started winning awards. We were up against each other all the time throughout that next 2 years. And we all kept saying, oh, maybe it's going to be Richard's turn this time or whatever. So we kept trying to figure out who would get it. We could never choose. Hey, Rem.
Like, it was very, very competitive.
But in a good way. It was
in a good way,
It was great camaraderie in that first collective.
Absolutely. And some of the people that came out of that, I mean, the other players in there was Warwick Thornton. His film was Payback. Richard Franklin. Nowhere to Forget. Darlene Johnson.
Sally Riley.
Sally Riley, who became the head of Indigenous at Screen Australia. Who was that?
Sam Watson.
Sam Watson. We also had people like Murray Louis, who started out with us, who's gone on to do television series and feature films. The Black Olive, Mark Olive, it was a part of our crew, but is an on-screen personality. He was a chef before he came into filmmaking, and now he's got his multiple series that are going around the country. Might have seen, and several other people who are still in the industry. And I think the Sandor Celluloid initiative, initially pushed by Wal Saunders, the late Wal Saunders, was about there had been filmmakers before that, but have never been a community or collective that they were going to push through. So it was a big initiative. It was fully funded. Our films reflected the same size as roughly as a feature film size crew would have been. We had SBS Independent at that time, who were the broadcaster. And we had a lot of, I think the other part of this is a lot of those veteran filmmakers, and Kim Batham, John Scott, and many more, came on to be a part of that development and to be a part of this major push. And I think when we look back at that, we also got an opportunity to do a couple of other long form half hours after that. And then, that was our way into gaining experience. And I think one of the big things that I'm proud of is what Pauline touched on before, and that is we were the only producer director team. We were the only team that had a film that actually is 17 minutes rather than the 10. Two very much unknown people well, Pauline's family is more known in the industry, but they took a chance on us. And some ways coming on here and sharing this is about acknowledging them, because it's been some 30 years, umpteen number of hours, both in television and on screen, that we can pay back and put back into the opportunities we get. And so that's why with even festivals, even if you're watching this and you're just a filmmaker, I love watching films, there's something for you. But there's also, we like to know the background to that if you're a budding filmmaker or a filmmaker who's probably taken a few knocks and not feeling like it's for you, but you still have the passion, then just try and push through, because it is quite rewarding. It is rewarding in so many different ways, and not least the really strong friendships that you find and establish and have along the way. So when you watch it, we do hope you enjoy it. And look, we've chatted on. I don't know, Clive, is there any other questions you want to throw in there? We're like that. That's how we go.
I do some more questions. I feel like there's so much great stuff y'all just both said.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a bit more about like the specifics of the From Send to Celluloid program? Like you talked about it, like specifically being designed to kind of help create this community, and also that you were interacting with some of the other filmmakers a lot. Like, what was the pitching process like? What was it like when you got into the room? Like that sort of thing. Did they give you guidelines? Like you said, you pushed past the 10-minute limit. Was that like a discussion you had to have, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Do you want to do it,
actually,
Em?
you do it, Pauline, because
Oh,
my memory is not all that good. I mean,
so so I remember when he started the Indigenous unit, said there's 4,000 hours made of Indigenous people, with only 4 hours being made by Indigenous people. And he wanted to correct that. And that's why Indigenous Drama Initiative got created, which became the Sand Celluloid. And as a part of that, they knew that some people, we were lucky that we were at the film school at that time. So we sort of kind of were moving towards that. But it was to open the world up and to allow storytelling to come into the space for directors, and for there to be Indigenous writer directors that came out of that initiative. So they did a call out, first of all. I think Rima, you actually wrote a script. Like he knew what he wanted in the story. And some people, there's a great story about while Warwick had written his concept on a napkin and had handed that in, and that became payback.
Very visual.
So some people, I think Richard had written it slightly as a poem originally, and then that got like transformed. So each of us came at it from really different perspectives. And there were 10 that were
10. It was initially 10 that went into the workshops.
And they went into a workshop. So it was the first workshop in Melbourne was a writer's workshop. So working with the Neil Armfields of the space. There were so many of them. They were
Lex Marinos.
Yep, Lex Marinos, the great. So all these great writers that sort of kind of supported the writer directors to write the first drafts of it. And then they had a second workshop in Sydney where they brought together then the 6. So then it dwindled down to 6, I think, or 7, because there was originally going to be 7 and one got too expensive because it was in Arnhem Land.
That's right.
And sorry, it's the photographic memory, I think.
Thankfully.
Makes me a little bit manic with detail. But yeah, so then the 6 went into a workshop mode. And at that point, they brought in a couple of actors to read your script through and work on stuff. And that's how we found Gary Cooper as a part of
the Aboriginal Gary Cooper.
The Aboriginal actors that was a part of our scripts. And then there was uh, a day of workshopping of understanding how to work on a set with a first AD, and then it was a day with the DOP, wasn't it? So
I think so. And a day with performance direction,
and
which
performance
was
direction
pretty
stuff as well.
insightful.
Yeah.
Like we'd never done that. Like the actors who were there, it was always drawn from your emotion, and they brought in dramaturgs who showed that you don't have to work on your emotion. We can work on technique. And I found that, because we're just taking the next step. We had no experience in watching other people. Well, I didn't watching other people. It's just what you think and what you hear. So all of that was a crash course. They were investing a lot of money into it, and we soaked it up. It was very much a camaraderie thing. We'd all, wish each other well in our shoots. Sometimes people could work on the other shoots, but yeah, it was really well done. I've got to say, and not just for that point, but for the progression, which is always important. That's why you always see, a second opportunity, a third opportunity, because you don't learn everything. I think you learn all your flaws on the first one, and then you slowly progress towards trying to be having what I call a seamless film, where you look at it and you're going, it's all there.
Yeah.
We look at Roundup and all of our films and go here and there, but at its heart, when we look at the story, our intention was, we want the audience to feel placed. It was like, yes, we've got that. Was the key. That was the main thing. As long as we get audiences to the conclusion and the place that we want them, but everything else then is finding a seamless flow there. That's people go, oh, that didn't feel right, or that acting was a bit weak, or that shot was a bit weird, or that line was, that's all part of the progression. And it is wonderful to look at it back all these years later and say, wow, that's where we started. And we continue to learn as you move on as well.
Yeah. So the development component of it was probably about 6 months. There was a workshop once they chose the 10, and then the 6 went into a more intense workshop. And then you had to deliver scripts with a final budget, and everyone's had well-known producers. I got a mentor. So Graham Isaac was our series producer, and he helped support all of us. And then I had Dick Mason as a mentor that sort of kind of helped me deliver the budget and get it across the line. At that time, both me and Rima had found an office we pretended that we had an office in SBS. And so because we couldn't afford to pay for rent at that time for an office. And so and then we, made it happen somewhere else when we finally got the budget. But it was just that experience of totally understanding that it was going to be, as I said, like as each one went, often like our crew moved on to the next crew. So it became this sort of kind of collective of people that started to really learn skills from each other as well.
I think one of the funniest, well, we look at it now and it's quite funny. On one day you're on this set with a 30 plus crew, on location. You're being pampered. You're being I don't know, like a pilot. And then a couple of weeks later, when the production's over, you're back to where you were and going, wow, that was like a bit of a dream. And you're at the doll office queuing up, and there's a couple of actors a bit in front of you waving to you. And
Callum Mulvey was four in line. He was one of
that's Callum Mulvey,
the gang members in the alleyway.
Yeah,
and it sort of kind of makes you realize that we're all in this game where you're sort of kind of 1 minute on the red carpet, the next minute you're back at the doll queue,
And Callum, who only had a bit part in the film, is in Hollywood, and he's on part of those. He did all of the Aussie dramas after that, and ended up based in Hollywood now, which is pretty cool when you see him up there and you go, wow.
Mm.
You know, he acted on our little film, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, right. Thank you for answering that. Definitely gave me a lot of insight into that space. It sounds like a really fun time. I gotta say, it sounds like just absolutely exhilarating to be in that zone. Yeah.
Yeah, and something that
yeah,
hadn't been done before in
no,
Australia, right? So the short films that were being produced through the Australian Film Commission back at that time, were often given money to sort of kind of, people that had credit, people that, and none of us had the credit. So we all were surrounding us with those workshops that gave us the skills to be able to walk on set on the first day and at least have a little bit of understanding.
yeah,
I mean, both me and Rima just like went, like, let's be open and
yeah,
say, we don't know everything, but come
no,
and ask us or tell us what we're doing wrong,
yeah,
and we'll try and
yeah,
rearrange it and fix it.
yeah,
That was our method of madness. And I think in a lot of ways, because the crew that we had, you know, 5 years later worked on Saturday night, Sunday morning, 4 years later worked on,
yeah,
we kept a lot of the same crew, especially
yeah,
in the heads of departments, still are our friends. And,
yeah,
a few of them worked on our indie feature film that
yeah,
we're currently finishing in
yeah.
post. So,
And yeah, and we
that's
didn't,
the great thing about when you do these sort of films that are, and when you're working for the long game, not
yeah,
just to make the short that you want to make, but you're going to be in the industry for the long
relationships.
game,
Yeah,
is that you've got to make sure that you're looking after your production crew because they're your family that are going to work with you
mm,
for the next 30 odd years,
yeah. There's something to add there too, which is quite important. I forgot. I remember it. I remember it.
Perhaps it'll come back as we keep
Yeah,
talking as well. Oh, so really like we were talking about this idea of like, yeah, you're not just thinking about Roundup, you're thinking about Roundup and then beyond, and then like the next
yeah,
20, 30 years, right? And you said you both said you got opportunities out of this from this making this movie.
yeah.
But like, what about the moment like immediately after? Like, do you remember the reception to the series and to your show in particular? And you said you're back trying to make money elsewhere for a moment. Like, what was it like right after you made it, right after it went out?
Well, because we were the first to go, we then had to wait for everyone else to
Everyone to go,
finish.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
How long was it between like
So
you
we
being
finished
Ooh,
November 95, and and the release at the so it had a national release. I mean, that was the coolest thing about it, was that we got to go out to community all around the country and show the films all together, I suppose, in a way. Hey, Rem.
yeah, yeah,
And so there was I think it was July 96 was so exactly 30 years ago. Scary. Um uh when it got played in Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane were the first three, and then it just started touring around. We found that every NAIDOC week for the next 10 years, like, they became the cult sort of films that everyone wanted to watch. And then we started all getting nominated. So we got nominated. I think the Dendies were the first ones for us,
yeah. It's pretty massive.
and where we won that. And then Asia
Yeah,
Pacific Award.
and then the
So
Adams
then,
and
and
yeah,
then I remember when Richard, when Nowhere to Forget got into Carmen, that was like everyone was like gasping and going, "Oh my God!" Like these little films that we didn't think anything about. We knew they were important for us. We knew that the community, because we'd been around at different screenings around Australia with community, we knew that the community loved them. We just didn't realize that they would have the international sort
yeah,
of recognition that they got. It's really hard when your first film does so well because you go, is this it? Like you've got to try and make sure that the next film's got the same
yeah,
impact, right? So
yeah,
it was really interesting, hey Rem, to sort of like go, Oh gosh, I hope we haven't hit it all now. Well,
Yeah.
like I hope we can make another one from this. But yeah, it was an amazing, almost. I mean, it was also hard because we moved on to other work very quickly because we'd both been trained in television. We knew that that was the bread and butter. We also realized that film took longer, and back then it was shot on film. I mean, short films were shot
Mm.
on 16 mil back in the day, and then punched up to 35. So we sort of kind of understanding, I suppose, film and that the ratios are smaller, that you have to know what you're doing with it, meant that I remember Rimmer was always, sorry, I'm detracting back to the shoot, but Rimmer was always drawing storyboards just to make sure of his action so that he could get it right in his head. And every once in a while he'd draw a basketball, you know, he was mad about drawing basketball men in his shots. I don't know why you did that, Riv. You need to just do a thing about basketball, I think. I
Maybe.
think the Space Jam was big at the time. And I think that that just meant that for us, it kept it relevant for like 4 to 10 years, you know, and we just didn't we realized very quickly that it was going to impact because it was the first, because all of the films were so successful. It had such a legacy work to do. And everyone expected that it was, you know, it was the way in which the technique of the workshops was run, it was the way in which it was done. But I think it was also, they were exceptional filmmakers. You know, Warwick Thornton and Richard Franklin and Rimmer and Darlene and, you know, Sally Riley, and that have all are still in the industry today. They sort of kind of knew what they wanted, and they knew what story they wanted to tell, and it had never been done like that before. So it allowed the world to see inside very contemporary stories very quickly, on a plethora of storylines, you know. And so yeah, it's that thing about when you give the power of something about us without us sort of concept into play, it allows for people to see the authenticity of story. And that's why I think they resonate still even today.
Mm.
Sorry, that was totally off topic, I think.
No,
Yeah.
it's good. It's good. Thank you.
Good.
I just want to also throw out like when you mentioned like short films back in the day used to be shot on film, and when I watched the old DVD of the From Santa Celluloid series, my first thought immediately was just like, oh my, this looks so good. They all look so beautiful, just like
Yeah.
immediately. So it just and Roundup is so. I mean, you were talking about the horse shots earlier. The horses at the end. That's such a beautiful sequence. It
Yeah.
looks so good. And I said with like in contrast to the city scenes earlier. I was really glad y'all talked about the horses because that was I was rewatching and I was like,
The
I didn't
reason
know.
why it's well, the reason why it's freeze framed is because that's the shot where he falls
That
off.
Charlie Falls. Okay, that makes sense. There we go. That's a
So
great
we
one.
had to
Freeze frame is
freeze
great.
frame because he fell off the next shot, but we needed it to go just a little bit longer for the music.
It worked. It worked. Like I guess necessity is the mother of invention, right? Yeah.
It
Freeze frame is
it
Yeah.
awesome.
definitely is. And, PJ, is this the digital intermediate path? Was it this? I can't remember. With Kim?
It's the black thing
It's a
was the
black
one.
thing. It says another. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
this was
we
fully
yeah,
filmed.
our cinematographer Kim Badaham, who's at the film school. I think he's still lecturing
No,
there.
he's retired now.
He retired. Ah, he's retired. Um, yeah, we brought him on for the second one, and we tried to keep our team together as much as possible as we progressed through these. But we were very fortunate to come in at the time. We did all different levels of experience.
Rimmer. That was for the third one. Warwick shot your second one.
Oh gosh, here you go. There's so much water under the bridge. I don't even remember. But we had what's right. Warwick came on and shot our second.
Second Saturday night. Yeah.
It all rolls into one. Suffice to say, still love feature drama. And look, you know, we've got our yeah, independent feature coming out hopefully this year. Um, and when I mentioned before that we look back at all that everyone's critical, right? And I think we're critical for a number of reasons, not least that you have to in situations like this when people ask you a question about your film and your narrative, why you went this way rather than that way. It's our responsibility as storytellers to understand that. So we have a process between ourselves where we ask the question, because if we don't know, who knows? That's what someone remember saying on the set to me. He goes, "What color do you want the policeman in? You want them? Who do you want?" I said, "Oh, the two guys." He goes, "It's your film, And I went, it's right. It is. It is our film, and you should know. And not to say you should know everything, but you should know the narrative. You should know the vibe. You should know the intention of characters. And one of the things I wanted to say before
And
is
on
there was
top of it, like you and Ben had, like, you should have seen them, Kai, on set. They had arguments about Rima had the t-shirt out for Ben when he was in the city, and Ben argued with Rima.
no, it's Ben with
Was
the
it the other?
cigarette, and it was Gary with
They
the
argued
shirt.
about whether or not someone should have their t-shirt
Yeah,
or their shirt tucked in, and they're like, "No, we're country boy." Like Rimmer was arguing with
yeah,
them, going,
yeah,
"No, when cowboys go to town, they tuck
yeah.
it." You
That
know,
was
like,
that was Gary. And Ben was
so they
more
wanted
like,
to be looser and stuff.
yeah,
And Rimmer was like, "No, it's country boys."
but
Like, so it was this
yeah,
great conversations that kept on happening. I remember when Lillian was in the um
she's the street lady in
alleyway. She's
the
the street lady in the film, and um,
in
uh,
Crombie.
and she was just, everyone thought she actually was a street lady when we were walking. They were like, "What's a street lady doing in the set?" Like, it's like, no, she's a part of our set, but she's
Yeah.
a famous actor. Like, but it was beautiful because she just wanted to work with us, like.
Mm.
I think that was what was so lovely, is that people just came because they wanted to be a part of the team. We actually, I think Oxenbould moved into the lounge room at the
Yeah.
house we were all
Yeah. He had
at, because
detachment issues.
he had
Yeah.
attachment issues at the
Yeah.
end, because
I think
we'd all gotten so close and bonded. We shot um the film in Megalong Valley, like all of the scenic stuff was in
country stuff.
Megalong
Yeah.
Valley, where was it Ben Hur was shot?
Uh, Man
And the
from Snowy River, wasn't it? Is it?
something, no,
Yeah.
Ben Hur, I think. Ben Hall.
Ben Hall.
Yeah. And the stuntman was the stuntman from 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
still Stainless was the stuntman from that. So I think it was that thing of like, we just didn't realize that we had all these connections to all these crew
Yeah.
members as well. And they became such good family afterwards that we sort of kind of never lost all of that, you know?
That was very special.
Mm.
Um,
And still trying to work together, which is crazy.
and I want to ask you all about the new feature film you're talking about. I'm excited to hear a bit more about. I guess I have a kind of a question of like in between these 2 points, as it were, which is that y'all made Roundup, and it was a big thing, and it led to a lot of other opportunities, and y'all have been making documentaries, making short films, making feature films in between now and then. As both of you directing as well. And but I want to ask about kind of a separate thing, which is that you've also, in addition to doing that, like, let's say more like directly creative stuff, you've both worked, Rima, you've worked as a producer, NITV, right? And Pauline, you've worked at various film festivals yourself, right? And I was wondering, like, if that different kind of experience, how that has fed into your filmmaking process, your creative outlooks.
Definitely TV is like Pauline said, it's bread and butter, and but there's passion in there. There's still story narratives within that. So I've been Pauline worked at NITV as well. We had a company together, which is it's really on the back burner at times. So we've done a feature documentary on her family, which is one of the landmark contents that I was a part of. Very honoured, and it's called When Colin Met Joyce. If anyone is interested in understanding more about Pauline's background and what drives to her father and mother, Colin and Joyce, amazing people. We that was one of the major things, but also, I mean, Pauline's like 30 years. Pauline's worked in Screen Australia, helping a lot of other filmmakers. We've done some key documentaries together. Desperate
Yeah, I
Time,
think
Desperate
we're
Measures.
just really passionate, Kai. Like I think,
Yeah,
and on top of it, like we were at the helm of writing the new wave of Indigenous voices that were coming onto
mm,
screens, at a time when there wasn't an NITV.
mm,
We and like for me, it was moving into places that helped not just us, but other filmmakers
mm,
to open that world up. Creating Message Stick at ABC was something that both of us were a part of.
mm,
And then we were at the time when there was build momentum, the success
mm,
of Sanders Celluloid allowed us to sort of kind of open the door in a way to
mm.
other opportunities. I ended up being the series producer on the next series of the shorts, and produced one of them. It was that thing also of knowing that when you're writing scripts, you know, they take a long time, and so, as a producer, I needed to be able to allow Rima to develop his ideas, but it also meant that I had to work with others. And then on top of it, we both knew television well, in a lot of ways, because we'd worked at ABC and then later SBS,
Mm.
then later in ITV. Um, but we were also part of the founding group that started talking about NITV and working on developing that space, because we knew what the importance was, because it was important to us, and we could
Yeah,
see what the reactions. I remember when Rim took um, uh, Roundup up to Brisbane, and all of his family,
mm,
went to watch it. Like that difference of seeing your own family be so
mm,
proud of the work that you're doing, and the impact of other people clapping. When we showed it in Sydney, my mum, who's really strong and an activist, was crying because for her, she hadn't been to a cinema with lights up, because she'd grown up in the era when Aboriginal people, the movie started playing, and she'd never seen the beginning or the end of it, because she was put in once the film
yeah,
started, once the lights were down. And so,
yeah,
thing of understanding what that impact was for our mob, to be able to go to a cinema and watch our film and celebrate their own stories up on screen
mm,
in that way was really huge. So we knew what that impact was, and we wanted to open the door not just for ourselves, but for other people.
yeah,
And
and
we knew that we could tell
yeah,
good stories.
yeah,
I think having ABC back us and create
yeah,
Message Stick allowed us to do a huge amount of work
yeah.
in the
I,
four or
but
5 years we were there, and then later at SBS. So
I think
we've been very lucky.
I need to pay homage here to Pauline, because I'm essentially a director writer who's wearing a cap as a TV producer, which is not the same as drama producing. But and Pauline is both in ABC and in NITV. She created a mechanism where community groups who are doing video, or community, or filmmakers who are just starting out, could engage, be funded to have a small amount of funds that they could build on to create short stories that fit a very that narratives that were on elders or on youth or on your hero, or do you know what I mean? It helped. I don't even want to know the numbers. It's in a couple of hundreds, and this was the mechanism that's Pauline's understanding of how to create. You've got a broadcaster, you've got a budget, you've got a community out there who need resources to tell their story, and it allowed them to survive on a very little amount of money. They could group together 3 or 4 stories, and they'd have a reasonable production fund, and they could
Mm.
build on that if they could connect with businesses and say, hey, do you want a screen credit on this short story? And this was putting it out to the community. I remember I was sitting there one time, and Pauline, she'd put out the call out, and at the time NITV wasn't known, wasn't looked on fondly broadly. But when this went out, everybody started submitting, say, yeah, I'd love to do that. And for me, as we sat at that airport that time and seeing them all come in, it was one of the important things that we want to start out to do, and that is support the next generation, support other people who don't have the understanding of how to you create the path. Pauline is a path creator, and I'm a creative, but not necessarily and a trainer, but I'm not a path creator, and that has opened up the door for hundreds of people out there. And it's, I think someone else tried to take it and use that in other areas of different multicultural groups as a way of seed funding, something that is quite small, but it's more than that. It's about giving people an opportunity and connecting the dots. And that's one of the things I worked with someone with Pauline Light for so long, because she has integrity and she's a very intelligent woman. I'm not just saying this because there are people who've benefited from her work. My work's been about me and working for the man and delivering what I need to deliver and trying to be creative on the side where I can. Her work's that, and also this other part, which is when we look at the world of Indigenous filmmaking and opportunity, Pauline has been one of those real stalwarts in making things happen with a hat on of millions of dollars or not. And that's one of the things that I'll sing to the tree tops, because these sorts of people are very integral to progression of particularly of community. And we're just fortunate in the Black world that we have someone like you, Peach, and I'm very honored just to be, associated.
Stop it.
It's true.
Speaking of no money, that coming out of COVID, that's how we started to do the feature. Because I turned around and said, I'm not wheeling you out in a wheelchair. Like, we're getting too old. And we've been in the game for a long period of time, and we've trained everyone else to look after their dreams, but we haven't gone for the feature that is our dream. And so what would we do? And so we started writing Promise Mum. It was during COVID, hey? And then we were like, okay, now we got to make it. And you
broke the cardinal sin. You broke the cardinal sin.
We broke the cardinal. Jerry Letts, who was a great filmmaker and used to work at film school, said to us, don't ever put your own money into your own films. And we always have. I think we've always put, because you do put your time, and that's money, and so we broke the absolute cardinal sin and did it independent, because we wanted to tell it in a very different way to what, we didn't want it to be framed by other people telling us how to tell that story. Do you want to tell? I mean, we're co-writers on it, but it's a story about a young boy who's been brought up in a boarding school most of his life, and 3 days before his wedding, his mum forces him to go home for the first time, and so it's a journey back
to the North Coast
for him for the first time, and
from Sydney to the North Coast, New South Wales.
And so it's about talking through abandonment issues and a whole lot of other stuff for this young man who's about to marry, and letting go of that angst so that he can live a better life. And I think it was just, for me, it was all these stories that Mum always told us going through country as little kids coming down to Sydney, that I was like,
from McLean.
He was always telling us stories to go home, like they were always stories of the country we were in and what that path line of a contemporary songline would look like if you went along the Pacific Highway. And so it sort of kind of we shot it almost like a doco in a way, because the crew,
the doco size crew,
7 strong. Me and Rima were debating with each other about, I think I was the elf and he was the dwarf in Lord of the Rings in terms of numbers, right? In terms of how many credits we got each day.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, you beat me. You beat me hands down. I'm not even talking about that.
When you're only 7 strong, you're having to do art department and whatever. Like if Rima touched the boat to pull the boat into shot,
I'd call everything.
I'm boat wrangler today. You're gonna knock that up. Like we were.
But seriously, Pete, you should tell them. I mean, we co-directed. Pauline had a grasp on the Essentially, it was her sister who'd done some acting before, who was Grace, the mum, and also was culturally understood the same sort of stories. But Pauline directed the narrative in terms of the female um, journey and cultural journey through that. I had an understanding of the young fish out of water male, who, funnily enough, is my mate's son who got into acting from. I didn't know we didn't know this. It just sort of happened, and I knew his mum and dad when they first met. But anyway, side note, um, it was a journey of this young kid who went to boarding school. His mother got him in there. He stayed there, but then he moved into. He didn't see his mum as much, and he moved into of his best friend, who was his classmate, in with their family, who were an affluent white family living in Manly. So he grew up there into his teenage years, fell in love with the sister, and he was just on the eve of getting married. And his mum pulls, pulls out, "Hey, you promised to take me back home, and I'm ready. I'm ready." So he's obligated on the eve of the wedding to take her back up to her country, which he's never seen or experienced before, and has learned a different way of living. And now but her thing was that she wanted to show him his country. And so that's the underpinning thing. And so the cultural stories that as they journey back relate to the relationships, their journeys as a mother and son, and his journey as a young man growing up, away from country. So it's really well interweaved. The post and the pre was all like this. We really drew upon a number of things. That's the skill that we've known, and we'll take on a challenge, and we were ready. Money or no money was Pauline's money, and thank you, Pauline, again. And we also delved into so many people we'd worked with along the way. We said, "Hey, we can't pay much, or we can pay a little," and they just went, put their hand up. We should pay homage to Susan Lumsden, who was a cinematographer, who in her own right is someone who's been overlooked in the Australian film industry. She is incredible. We work with her through ABC. She's done features, series internationally, but can't get a gig here. So she's brought on a little team of people, her camera crew, her gaffer, who are challenged too, like us in some ways. Although we had a good start, our journey towards the end was a little bit rocky. So we brought all these people together, people we knew who were singers to act, people I worked with my uni buddy who I've known for a long time. We were in our video class at Griffith Uni in Brisbane. He was still in the industry. So I said, "Hey mate, I need someone to be a barman." And he had done a bit of acting. So he joined in. So it was this wonderful, it's probably something you wouldn't get if you would have been fully funded, because you'd have this money. But this necessity drove us to where we kind of really wanted to be, and that's working with people who valued you, who valued what you were doing, and valued you enough to give you their time. Cornell Ozies, who was a cinematographer, he took off 2 days to work with us on our Sydney shoot.
Andrew Belletti has done all the sound on all of our dramas.
And all of to date.
It was that thing of like, yeah. I think it was that thing of, hey, Rem, like, and because a lot of people that said yes were people that hadn't, sometimes hadn't been given the shot themselves before. Yeah. They sort of and it was such a beautiful set. Like we were hard up against it. We were on the road for majority of it, up the Pacific Highway, going into small towns. So we were trying to make sure that we had to hit every moment. The first day of shoot was bloody raining.
That's right. The sun was going down over the ridge. We had 5 minutes. I said to the crew, "No mucking around the cameras. That sun goes, we can't come back." And we just hustled. And it was one of the most strongest scenes. It was really the one where, he tells his mum, it's just beautiful. Like it's that sort of pressure. I look at that experience as probably as the high one of there's been so many, but that's because of all of that, because it wasn't fully funded. It wasn't funded. Pauline funded it basically, and some wonderful people out there who supported us to agree that they could. We did it with people that we connected with, people who were cheering for you, people who believed in you, and we in them. And I think, that itself made us walk away from that with a real sense of accomplishment in the best way. You can make films and you might make the best film in the world, but if there's no heart in the journey, then that's all it is. You know what I mean? So that's what's important. It's also the journey that we go on together with the crew that we go on together with as well, with all of those actors along the way, with all of those creators we input, and those outside of that too. They're a part of that journey. And importantly, because we are people with emotion and we're people with desire, and we're all sharing in that. That's probably why I do like filmmaking and storytelling, because it's not one person. It's really a group of people, and they're all of the people, because they bring a certain dynamic and that's unique to that moment in time. And that's why we'll always look back at all the things we've done and look at them with a sense of connection to that moment in time, because it means more than what you're seeing on screen. It means the people that were involved in making it. So
And I think it's also like one of the things that Rim's really good at is cutting down to what the truth of the intention of the filmmaking. I remember when we did the first casting on, he put a little post-it note up saying, "Leave your ego at the door." I think it was just really important for us that we, on all of our films, we've been truthful. We've looked after each other in terms of the film and the community that we create. And I think we both turned around and said, if we don't feel passionate, let us walk away. That's the moment when we're really lucky that we're 30 years in and we love what we do. I think Rima working at NITV allows him to do his work every day and be a filmmaker every day. And I think that's really important, that we have never lost that passion. We still want to make another film,
I've still got, I don't know, I'm frightened to talk to you about it. I don't want to take you to take out another, bit of your fortune. But one thing that we should add here, the terminology that we always used to use is, we don't use fake it till you make it. You're only kidding yourself. It's a bit of advice from us. Like, you take it or leave it if you're a filmmaker out there, because when you walk into a room and you're faking it, people know you're faking it. They know that. And the best way to actually get crew on side is to say, don't know that. This is where I come from.
They're going to teach you as well, right?
Yeah. But what you should know as a director or a writer or the producer is the story. That's what you must know. They don't know that, but they can add to it. And once you open up and say, "Look, I don't know," when Pauline was talking about the storyboards, I usually do one or two that I can see here, and then I go to the DP, add around that. That's what I can see. I need you to add around that. Same with the editor. I've got this. I don't know that other. It's blind to me, and they go, "Thank you. I've got something to work on." So if you're working, please, the best way to work with your crew is to be open and honest, and they are there to help you. They're not there to mark you down or whatever. Their job is to actually support your vision. And the more that you can be open and trusting of them, the more that they will help you with your vision. That's their job. They love it.
And on top of it, when you think about it, as a director, you might walk on the set in drama once a year. They're walking on set at least 7 to 10 times. So, like, in terms of experience, your crew are coming with a wealth of, so utilize that.
Absolutely.
To the best of your ability.
Yeah. Just know your story. Know your story. Know what you want out of it. Know where your beginning is and your end is, and know the key points as much as you can.
And know to fight for what you want. Rima had this for Roundup, that he always saw this sort of epic, it's the reason why he got called the Hollywood filmmaker at the start of his career.
Bit of a way off, but anyway.
Epic sort of kind of like pull away shot for the title sequence. And he kept saying it to everyone, and everyone was like, we don't quite know it. And he would show people references to it. And we're like, how the hell is he going? And then Kim said, and we're going to need a jib, it's going to be big, and it meant he knew that that's one shot that he absolutely couldn't not do. And so for me, it was about making sure as a producer that the big shots that he absolutely, he wanted more of those jib type shots everywhere else. But it's like,
But we
which
only
is
can
the
have one
one
jib,
that you want to fight for?
and I got it up at after the fight where they pulled away because it was a transition into the city. So she gave me one. Thank you.
It does make the whole movie feel bigger, doesn't it? The
Yeah,
best
that's
one
right.
before
Yeah,
that.
leaving. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is that, like, if you like, people always say that about our films. It looks like that we had a lot more money than we did.
Wow.
And I think it's just because we dream big and I call it the champagne existence on a beer budget. If we know what are the things that are going to give us the look that helps us to tell not the negative stories of our people, but some positive influences.
Yeah.
Needs a bit of bling every once in a while.
Well, engaging the people who understand that through lens. Susan was, there was many a times we had multiple people in a scene and we didn't have any time to cover everybody's reverse. So I just looked at her and said, what do we do? And she said, we'll do it like this and this and this. And thank you. There are answers. I think the other part, sometimes particularly when you're on low budget, you can't have everything. You've got to think creatively and allow those creatives to feed into shit. That's why I'm saying share your problem. And they'll go, we'll just do it like this. And you go, okay. that wasn't that hard. You make it hard in your head. But what am I saying?
And then
Crew,
just have fun,
story,
right? I mean,
fun.
We're lucky we have a lot of fun on our sets.
Well, there's been drama. There's been drama over the years, but you know
drama.
what? There's always drama. But here's the thing: when I look back, PJ, the times there's one time we were in, as we were saying to Kai before we came on, we were sitting on set at 2 o'clock in the morning out west somewhere, freezing cold, just looking at each other and going, "I'm not going. If you're not going, someone has to look out to the set," because we were out of Griffith at that time or wherever we were staying, and we wouldn't leave, and we're both stubborn. We had to work at about 7 o'clock in the next morning, whatever. But it was because we were believing in looking after our set and looking after the story. And here we are as the supposedly producer director and 30 people back in the hotel rooms. But I look back at those times and it just shows commitment to what you're doing. We just, no, I'm not directing them. Time's up. It's not about that. It's about us to essentially doing the dance from concept of the script to getting the funds, to doing the pre-production, to selecting the cast, to doing the shoot dance, to going into the post, and then to showing it to the world. That's our dance, and that's why we dance with so many people, but mostly with each other through the whole process. That's the joys and hardships too of being. Pauline carries it more than I do because she starts a little bit earlier in that process, but essentially we look at each other through the whole dance. We have different partners that come in and out, and it's so enjoyable, particularly when those partners come in and they dance really well and they contribute to the story, and that's why it becomes such a family because they're giving a bit more of their creativity as well that you need from them, and they need the opportunity from you and the trust from you as well. So
and I think sometimes, like, I think one of the things that some people do is they just worry about getting the film made. Like, we're lucky in a lot of ways. Rima allows me to interrupt his space when he writes a script, and I do this sort of kind of like Photoshoppy, create a poster, which often we then shoot and becomes the poster for the film. So I do a drawing and, so looking at, and I go, Rim, if I can give you a picture that says what the one frame of this story is that what it is? And he would go, sometimes he'd go, yes, and sometimes he'd go, no. But on top of it, not holding ourselves to, I'm the producer and he's the director, but sort of kind of understanding that it's a community that's working together. And, I love music. Rima knows I love music. He loves music. And sometimes, if he gets stuck, he'll ask me to help write words for poetry for the composer to work with. We've done that a few times.
Culture, language.
So I think it's just, where you can use your best foots,
Yeah. Well,
and put them forward, you know.
I just think it's
You don't
it's a
have to put yourself into these
yeah,
hierarchies of this is what
yeah,
the producer does, or this is, you know,
yeah,
people say
yeah,
nowadays, like there's creative producers and there's producers. There's just they're all the same thing, you
yeah,
know. We're just producers that have to look after money and have to look after
yeah,
creativity. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
Um, and isn't it better if you're walking together with people that you like rather than just
Mm,
doing it because you have to,
mm,
you know?
yeah. And particularly, I mean, your we have a unique, well, I don't know, actually, I don't know how unique our relationship is in terms of we just, this is the way that works. There's an openness. We have to be open because there's a lot of investment of time, energy, passion, inner turmoil, all of that, whatever's happening. So definitely a big trust there that we can ask people the hard question, each other the hard questions, because we are doing the dance the whole way through, and we need to have each other's back. And sometimes that's sometimes that ideal, and sometimes it pressures us. But there's a there's a deeper thing here for particularly for Pauline and myself, and that is look, I don't know. It's something about getting through something because we know we're getting from A to Z in a kind of, because there's a purpose there, and for us to get there, there's a trust with us, and everything else we try and get on our side, or we try and make conducive to the direction we're going. But it is definitely a partnership that has to be solid, and it has to be strong, and not saying that we haven't made mistakes. We've made many, but we're still here, willing to go for another dance, and that's, I think that's just testament
That's the
to
key.
our friendship and our trust and our belief in one another, and our belief in what we can contribute to the world, albeit maybe not Hollywood yet, but certainly in the world of storytelling, be it on the big or little screen, yeah, or on the computer like we're doing right now. Ramble again, Psycho. We're like
Oh,
that.
Sorry,
no,
Kai.
no.
We're
I
like
mean,
that.
honestly, it's been really, really wonderful to hear y'all talk about your work and how you work. Like, it's really, I'm sure you have also been on sets as I have, where the production is not like you're talking about. It's not like a family. It's not
Yeah,
open, and there's not like the kind of reciprocity you're
yeah,
talking about. It's just very, really wonderful to hear y'all talk about like how you're working, and like how it all
yeah.
puts together. So please, no apologies necessary at all.
Good.
I I guess I guess we could wrap up a little bit soon. I don't want to keep you all day. I guess maybe two quick questions. One, do we so there's a new feature. It's called Promise Mum, right?
Yeah,
And is there or are y'all you're almost done with it? You're deep in the are you in post? Like what's
we're
the
in
timeline?
post, last stages.
Last
Last
stage?
stage, we got
Cool.
picture
Just
lock.
trying to earn a bit of
Yeah,
money to
it just
pay
picture
some
lock. We
bills.
just got to get the grade and the credits together,
Yeah,
and but we're not far. The
not far.
it will be this year. It's just, yeah, when we're very excited. It's been a long road to get here. I mean, there's been a couple of false starts along the way, but I think in this one we've done it the way that we've always done it, and that is
Mm.
with a collective agreement between ourselves about what the reality is at that time in our lives, and that's what that is, and that's just where it is. And when you've been around a little while, you just know that's the reality, and
Yeah,
we got to be patient with these things. So yeah, we're confident it'll be out this year.
yeah, yeah. It'll be out this year. And then we're like, I just finished Kalino Heart, which is a feature doco. Um, and then about to do another doco just quickly for NOTV. And then we are starting to talk about what next
Amazing.
Yeah,
for ourselves.
And Kalino Heart is that's playing on SBS, am I wrong? Is for
Yeah, SBS on demand
Mhm.
at the moment.
Well, I'm really excited about the new movie. I'm excited to see where it ends up. Please, if you're interested in a screening with the micro cinema, let me know. We can,
We'll be in contact.
yeah,
oh my God, why not?
Yeah. And that's why I started Window Film Festival, right? And worked with it, being the founder of Imaginative, was we were making films and we had nowhere to show them. And so it was like, well, let's create our own festivals, because otherwise you're just pigeonholed into these bigger festivals that sort of kind of, now you know, we're the in thing, but you know, for a long period of time, we weren't the in thing. And so it's like, well, we know how to show films to our audiences and the ones
Yeah.
that, you know, we know will engage with it. And that's why, you know, it's important to have festivals that are like this, that are, you know, do it when they, you know, help to celebrate the films that you often don't see in the mainstream media.
Which is a good plug, PJ. Maybe it's to say, Kai, if you're ever in Sydney, or if any people watching up in Sydney, and Winter Festival is on, and it's basically an Indigenous festival from films.
From October to November, and it
Yeah,
runs one day every week for 8 weeks
in
Well,
Sydney at
because
the
it's about looking after the socioeconomic space as well, so that
yeah
people don't feel like they're having to fill up a whole
yeah,
week.
and it's a
You
beautiful
know,
location down at the
Barangaroo.
Barangaroo with the city skyline in the background, open air. If anyone's up there, have a look for it. Winter Film Festival,
we
which
definitely
has
have.
been going for a few years now, and some really exciting stuff coming from not just overseas. It's also
Yeah.
within the country from First Nations filmmakers.
Awesome. And we definitely have some Sydney fans in the audience that I'm sure will want to check it out.
Wonderful.
So, rad. Do you all have any other questions you wish I'd asked you? Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think we're talked you out. We're only
We're
supposed to be
talking to
on
you.
here for half an
Look,
hour.
the,
We
the, the only
do this
thing
every time, Kai. We do
we
this
do this
every
every day,
time.
but the only thing I remember, I forget the name, but these two guys, and they win an Oscar. I'm not sure, but I was watching it, and they'd won this major award. Two Aussie guys, and they said through the screens to fledgling filmmakers or filmmakers who are struggling out there trying to make their film. They said just don't give up, because that was them. And I said, if I wherever I go, not that I've done that, but I've certainly done something, is to say, to encourage filmmakers, young and old, that it's not about age, it's about your passion and doing things. And, get yourself with like minded people if you really believe in what you're doing, and just push on, because it's so rewarding. And we've been there, we've been there, and that's our responsibility to share that message to you guys if you're in that boat, because there is an answer, and passion can win over a lot of problems.
Oh, yeah, it can. And story is key, right?
Story is king. That's right.